It took the better part of a day to put this together, but we finally have our refinery set up, and it is beautiful and self-sufficient. I'm so excited. Hello and welcome to Kendrick Builds. We're back with another episode of Satisfactory, and we're picking up just a little bit after last episode, where we are going to try and get our oil refineries up and running. We've got a lot of oil here with these pure nodes, 240 per minute, and we placed down a refinery here to see that we're only going to need 30 per minute to make both plastic, and if we look at rubber, the same. And so my goal is to set up two sets of refineries here, since we've got two of these pure nodes, and run 8 refineries for plastic, 8 refineries for rubber, and then figure out what we're going to do with the byproduct here. And so we'll make the product that we want, but we'll also have all of this heavy oil residue that we're going to need to get rid of. And looking at the heavy oil residue here, essentially I think the only thing we can do with it right now is make this petroleum coke. And this is some high volume stuff. So we're probably going to need to put a fair chunk of this into a awesome sink or something to get rid of it. In fact, we'll probably have to put it into a few awesome sinks until we get our next level of belts unlocked, because at 120 per minute, we're going to have some problems with this backing up our production system. So we'll get a few refineries going here and be able to convert this all into petroleum coke. And we can also use that petroleum coke as kind of a poor substitute for coal. And so we're going to have to power all of this somehow. So I thought we might make some coal generators out here to power this whole setup and feed that petroleum coke right back into it, since I don't see any coal nodes out here. And we're not quite to a better source of power yet. So I think that's going to be the best bet. It'll use some of it up and do something that we need, which is always useful and a little bit better than trying to run power lines out here all the way from our other facility. See, our nearest coal is, 1.6, 1.5 kilometers away, so we're not going to mess with that right now. I've been playing around with some designs here, trying to figure out how we want to run our items and our fluids out of here. Since this is going to be the byproduct that comes out, we're going to need to pipe that over to a different set of refineries here somewhere. So I'm not quite sure where we're going to do the processing of that, but I was watching a video earlier today, and I came across the realization that you can place these splitters or junctions and snap them to a grid if you're standing above them on the pipe. When I'm down here on the ground, I don't get the snap lines the same way. And so you can move them around and place them, but you don't get like the blue snap lines. But if you jump up on top of a pipe, I can now snap them to the same grid and line everything up perfectly, which is an awesome discovery here. So I thought I'd share that with everybody, since I've been playing this game for a while and had not noticed that. Maybe there's somebody else out there that also had not been aware of that little feature. So without further ado, I'm going to get the rest of these refineries all put down. We had just run back up to the base and grabbed all the materials necessary to build the refineries that I think we're going to need, and some coal generators. So that we could get everything going here, since the base is so far away. I don't want to have to keep making multiple trips. So let me get this laid out and then we'll check back in. We're back and we've been busy. So let's take a look at this facility that we've put together here. We're not quite operational, but I think I've got everything I need to turn this thing on here. So I'm going to jump up here onto this pipe network so we can talk about our design here. So on the right hand side, we've got plastics in all of these. And so we have enough oil coming out of one of these pure nodes to run 8 refineries. And so we have 8 refineries here for plastic on the right, and those are all coming into a belt system that's going into one of these industrial storage containers. And then on the left, we also have 8 refineries for rubber. And so this node is going to feed those 8, and then the node that's on the back here are going to feed these 8. And what we've done then is run a single pipe down the middle here to take all of the heavy oil residue. On the right, we're creating 80 per minute. And then on the left, we're actually creating 160 per minute. And a single pipe holds 300. And so this was a perfect layout here for us to get all of the residue out of these refineries. And what I ended up doing, because we had our refineries kind of lined up across from each other here, is lining them up in such a way that I could share the pipes and the connectors and really cut down on the amount of nonsense that I had to do. We did waste a lot of materials, and that I probably could have achieved this without all these stackable pipelines, but the stackable pipelines made it easier to manage this, and it gives me this nice walkway to be able to run down the length of my refineries without running into anything and having to jump over belts, etc. We have wired up everything to some poles, tried to keep things looking fairly neat. I kind of hate when things clip through machines. And then we run this pipe down here to this set of refineries, which is going to take that heavy oil residue and turn it into petroleum coke. Now, because of the amount of heavy residue we've got coming in here, we needed 6 more refineries to process all that residue into petroleum coke. And then we are going to have to figure out what to do with that petroleum coke. And since we need power for this entire facility, I thought, what better way to handle that than to set up a coal production facility and just burn the petroleum coke for power. And so I'm kind of hoping that this works out and we don't have a lot of excess petroleum coke. If we do, we'll be using that excess, probably setting it up in a depot and hauling it around the map to fuel our trucks, maybe. I'm not sure. So we're going to have to figure out how that all works. But before I can figure that out, I need to start making the petroleum coke. And in order to start making petroleum coke, I need power. And so it's kind of a catch-22 situation here. And so what we've done is set up a couple of biomass burners here. 2 biomass burners will create a total of 60 megawatts of power, which is enough to fuel our 3 water pumps that are required for our 8 coal generators. And so we've set these up. I've also set up a battery here. The biomass generators won't feed the battery. It has to be excess grid generation, and these will dial themselves down when there's no draw on the power. So I was hoping to charge this battery up with these and then use that to kind of kickstart things. But what we're going to do instead is try to get these coal generators pushing power out. So the water pumps have run now to the point where they've filled up all of the coal generators. And so in order to generate power on the grid, I have a couple stacks of coal here. And so my goal is to drag some over here and have the coal generators come on and start powering the grid. And that power is going to charge up that battery. And so we're going to get 4 of these coal generators going manually like this. And once we have a little bit of power built up here in our grid, we should be able to start turning on some of these other machines. So I have all of the other power grids disconnected right now. So all of the petroleum coke refineries are hooked up to this pole, which I can just connect to the grid when I want to. And similarly, the whole network over here is going to run from this pole to that pole. So we've got to build up a little bit of power capacity here before we turn everything on. And if I just look at this pole here, you can see that we're going to need a maximum of 560 megawatts of power to run all of these refineries and the 2 oil extractors. And so 560 megawatts is a lot of power, considering we only have a production capacity of 300 right now. 360 if you add in the biomass generators. We're coming up just a little bit short. However, that is charging our battery up here a bit. And so my hope is that if we can get this thing to charge up a little bit, have a bit of a store, that we'll be able to get things up and running just enough to start creating the petroleum coke and get the rest of our coal generators online. So let's go ahead and see if we've gotten enough power here yet to at least get some of these online and moving. This is probably going to shut down our grid pretty quickly here, but I'm hoping that it gets just enough going here that we start cranking some things out and generating that whole heavy oil residue. And before the power grid shuts off, that we've generated enough to come in and start to fill some of these petroleum coke refineries. And so you can see here, we're not charging. Oh, we do have a charge rate of some every once in a while. Now we're finally discharging, probably because we've generated enough materials to start running multiple refineries here as the initial ones fill up. And so I expect this thing to hit a point where it's no longer charging and we're gonna back things up. And I'm just waiting to see some of this heavy oil residue show up in this pipe. You can see we're filling the pipes over here right now, and these indicators show that this is fairly filled up at this point. And if we look here, we haven't gotten enough to fill this pipe, so we've got to let it run for a bit here. This is discharging at a very heavy rate right now, and so I expect that we're going to run out of power to keep this system moving very, very quickly. So we may have to come up with a little bit more coal at some point here to keep these running. So our power generating capacity has finally shut itself down here because we ran out of the little bit of coal that I had in my inventory. And so unfortunately, we didn't get enough to generate any petroleum coke here. The heavy oil didn't even make it to those refineries yet. And so it looks like we're going to have to run back here and bring a bunch of coal with us just to get these going to the point where the factory will hopefully become self-sufficient. So we're going to run back up to the base, grab a few stacks of coal out of our existing setup, and bring those right back out here to see if we can get this thing up and running. All right, so we're coming back here, and I've brought 6 stacks of coal with us. And so I'm really hoping that this is going to allow us to get all of this brought in. It looks like the heavy oil residue is filtering through the pipes towards these buildings, and it turns out the reason that we didn't get anything into these buildings is because they weren't hooked up to the power. So that's my bad, but we're gonna fix that now. And what I want to do is get all of our coal generators going here with some coal and generate a good amount of power, hopefully, to keep the whole system running here for just a little bit. Since we do have some fluid in those lines, though, we're going to start the petroleum coke section up on its own before we get the rest of the factory going again. And just see if we can get some petroleum coke out, because I'm worried that when the wording on the description for petroleum coke is a less efficient coal, I'm worried that it's going to take either, it's not going to generate as much power, or it's going to take more items, or I don't even know. So we want to sort that out. So I've got the main factory disconnected at this point, but I have this factory connected. But before we do that, I'm going to disconnect it temporarily. And we're going to turn this on, and this should get our water pumps going, which should also get our coal generators going. So we're now producing 660 megawatts of power. So I should be able to connect these 2 lines together now and get the refineries going for the petroleum coke, which should start making this very quickly. And now that I have some petroleum coke, I'm going to take that into my inventory here. And we're going to come over here. This is taking 15 coal per minute right now to create 75 megawatts of power. If I take the coal out and put in my 15 petroleum coke, that's going to take 25 per minute to create the same amount of power, which is fine with me. We've got way more than that. We've got 120 coming out of each of these. So if I need 25 per minute here, and I have 8 of these refineries, that's going to be, what, 200? And I'm creating 120 per minute here. So 2 of these is going to generate enough petroleum coke to run all 8 of these, leaving me with 4 refineries worth of petroleum coke and a little bit of leftover from these. My goodness, we're gonna have way more petroleum coke than we need. However, we do have enough of a power grid here going to turn things back on over here, I think, with what we've put into this battery so far. We are going to start drawing down on the battery, which is fine. It's not that big of a draw, and essentially we're going to have to expand our power facilities here at some point, it seems like. So I'm trying to think of how I want to lay things out here in order to better distribute this petroleum coke, because at the moment our best conveyor is only going to process 270. I guess we can run a Mark III belt to power all 8 of these coal generators. All right, so after a quick redesign here, we have taken these first 2 refineries that are creating petroleum coke, merge them into a Mark III belt, and we're redistributing them across all 8 of these coal generators. I moved the pipes up a level here just to make it a little bit easier. I find it easier to put the item splitters on the ground and run the pipe work up in the air for some reason. I don't know. It's just going to be consistent with how I laid out the rest of the factory. And so you can see we've started feeding what petroleum coke we had in those 2 into these coal generators. So I'm going to try and turn these on and see if our system will come alive here on its own. We have the main part of the factory disabled at the moment, but we do have all of these petroleum coke refineries running, and so we are burning through that heavy oil residue. And I thought, as long as we're messing around with trying to get everything up and running, it made sense to put this fluid buffer in here, which is going to hold the heavy oil residue, so that if we do have a problem of some kind here, we've got a reservoir here, hopefully, of this built up so that we can get our power back and online. And so you can see here our petroleum coke is running out of these 2 refineries pretty quickly. I'm going to upgrade these to Mark III belts just to make sure that we can keep this filled up. It's getting awfully dark here, but I think we've got everything running. I see most of the refineries on. It looks like that one's just now coming on and off a little bit. So as the petroleum coke runs in here, we'll start filling this out. In fact, I could probably stick a stack of coal in here just to keep the power running for a little bit and get it out of my inventory while we stack this up. I did put a couple stacks of petroleum coke in back here to get things going as well. And what we expect, much like when we set up the other power system, is that these are going to slowly fill up here as we bring the items in. We're waiting for the first couple in the system to get to 100, and so here we're at 100, which I believe is the stack size for petroleum coke. And so this one will start to fill up, and as it kind of goes down the line, we'll get more and more petroleum coke to the later parts of the system. However, for that to actually work, we do need to turn on the rest of the factory. And so we're going to hook that up now because we've built up a little bit of a power in this battery. And what should start to happen now is that we're going to be pumping quite a bit of this heavy oil residue into this fluid buffer here as all of these get going. and that'll start drawing into these refineries, and before we know it, we'll have more petroleum coke than we know what to do with. So I'm going to let this run for just a second here and confirm that we're going to catch up on things. It does look like we are going back and forth between consuming and discharging on this particular power storage, and I believe that's because we're not quite running all of our refineries just yet. We need to get enough of this heavy oil residue pushing through in order to keep both of these refineries moving at full speed here. You can see this one's not quite staying up to speed just yet, but it should very soon. In the meantime, we should have some petroleum coke built up in these other refineries because we are sending it down the line into all of them. And what we can do is take that back here and just fill these machines up to keep them running, keep the power going, while we wait for everything else to kind of equalize. In fact, we've got this one here that's not hardly running at all, so I'll go ahead and drop some coal in that one just to make sure that it stays moving. This one's starting to build up petroleum coke now as well, and so I think the system has started to stabilize here. If we hop back over here, I expect this is now starting to build up a little bit of a residue. Actually, yeah, it kind of goes back and forth between staying even and draining the residue. That's kind of what I would expect, I guess, because we have just enough refineries here to use all of it up. Although the later refineries should stop running as their petroleum coke gets full. So we do still need to figure out how to get rid of the rest of the petroleum coke in those other machines, which will probably be a combination of an awesome sink and maybe a truck depot. Maybe we'll use this petroleum coke to fuel our trucks. We'll have to test that for efficiency. And if we look at our power grid here, you can see that our maximum consumption is 800 megawatts, and we only have a capacity of 660. So we do still have too much of a power drain on our system. We are going to need to expand this and add in a few more coal generators. Luckily, we have plenty of fuel for them here, and so I think it's going to make sense to set up another bank of 8. I'd rather have a bit of excess power, and that pairs up nicely with the water pumps. And so we'll look for another spot to set up a line of coal generators here, likely right over here. We've got lots of space right here, and that'll use up another 2 of these, or most of another 2 of these. So we won't have nearly as much leftover petroleum coke as I expected. So let's get the main part of the factory shut back down, turn this back on so that we can start charging that battery with what power we've got. And I'll get the rest of this power put together here and check back in with you guys. So I've come to the realization that in order to get a second run of those coal generators up and running, we're going to need some more parts. So I've tossed down our truck here, and we're going to drive back up to our base and pick up some parts. Hopefully we're going to be able to find a good way to get to our base. I think if I was going to run materials back and forth here, though, we might need to just set up a truck station and bring them up the side of this cliff here somewhere, rather than trying to drive all the way around. But I thought this would be a good test to see how efficient this petroleum coke is as a fuel for the trucks. This is going to be a fairly long course here. Well, and I'm not recording a course, but I'll say a fairly long run back up to the base, and I'm not even sure if we have a clear path to get back to the base. If I remember correctly, we're going to come up along the edge of the water here at some point and not be able to drive a truck through that. So I'm really kind of at a point where I'm trying to figure out how are we going to get all of these materials back up to our actual main base. without having to set up multiple truck courses and daisy chain them up there. Because here we're getting to the edge of the water and I just don't have anywhere to drive. I guess we can come up here along our conveyor belt to the mainland. Hopefully we can get by our coal system here. But this is, I don't know, a very, very roundabout course to get up there. We could move this belt around so that we could more easily get under it, I suppose. Whoa, because we're not getting around it this way. So raising this belt up is going to let us sneak under here with our trucks if this is the course that we decide to go down. However, I'm going to need 3 different trucks bringing materials back, unless we combine materials and then use some kind of a smart sorting system on the delivery end to separate those back out, which gets to be a little bit tricky if we don't have the need for all of those materials, just based on the way that the truck depots unload themselves. And so we are going to have to kind of think that through. Now, I've got a truck here that's run out of fuel, so I'm kind of curious. This is our steel truck, so he's got a lot of steel on him. I'm going to jump that petroleum coke in there and let him go about his business. We've lost one of our tractors here, the one delivering the iron ingots to our main base fell through the bottom of the map, so it shows up here on my HUD, but as we pass by it, it's actually going to be stuck down underneath the ground, so we're going to have to figure out how to recover that truck, get rid of that truck. I'm not sure. We might have to edit the save game to do something with that vehicle, but as we pass by here, it's like right under the ground, somewhere right over there, so who knows? It's always something crazy here with the things in Satisfactory. Honestly, I'd rather get a train system up and running than these trucks, I believe, and so we might just create some train depots here pretty soon, rather than continuing to expand on the truck network. And so I think that's going to be a good thing to work towards. So I'm going to park this guy here. We're going to run back over here and grab the materials that we need for our coal generators, which is a couple stacks of rotors, some reinforced iron plates. I'm going to need cable, which is back at the main base, and modular frames, which are up on the 2nd floor here. So let's go grab some of those. So we're not going to make the trucks to automate this. I am going to make some truck stations down there, I think, just so that I can manually go get a load of these materials whenever I need them. But I think for fully automating our plastics and rubber, we're going to hold off and try and unlock trains, because that station or that factory is quite a ways away from everything else. And essentially we'd need almost a full stack of this petroleum coke to power a truck there and back every time, which we'll probably have enough to do that. It just seems like a lot of excess there that we don't need, and fueling all of these trucks is starting to become a little bit of a pain for us. And plus, they just seem to be running into all kinds of wonky issues here. So we're going to go ahead and grab our cable, get our power set up, and think about getting to trains sooner than later here. So as long as I had to run back up here for some more supplies, I thought we'd take a quick look and see what research we could kick off here. And so we do have the ability to do industrial manufacturing, which is the big one here. That's going to unlock manufacturers, the bigger truck, which might be useful for some things, and the modular engine and adaptive control units, which are the project parts we need to start making to move the space elevator along for tiers 7 and 8. We've also got alternative fluid transport, which for the most part, I don't want to package a bunch of things up. However, it does unlock the larger fluid buffer and packaged fuel, which is very useful for getting to jetpacks. We can also unlock the gas mask, which is going to let us go into some different areas here and get a few more inventory slots. But what I've really got my eye on here is this expanded power infrastructure, which also comes with the awesome conveyor belt Mark IVs. Unfortunately, we're going to need a whole bunch of computers to get to this point. So we really got to get tier 5 industrial manufacturing unlocked so we can start making those computers. And so I figured as long as we're here, we might as well grab some wire and get this kicked off. And we're back up here at the hub with some additional wire here. Got everything all lined up for industrial manufacturing. So we've been gathering some miscellaneous supplies, refilling some things, and it looks like we were here long enough that the research came back. So we're gonna go ahead and I think do the gas masks just so I can get a few additional inventory slots here. And it's a really easy one to do. Luckily we had lots of mycelium from our little adventure in the caves a while back. So I was able to make some fabric real quick here. That was a really cool little fist hitting the button. And so with that sent out of the way, now we're almost done with tier 5 here. I'm kind of tempted to just see if we can finish unlocking tier 5 here and get it all out of the way. We would just need a few of these heavy modular frames, which really aren't that hard to make. And in fact, we've already picked up a bunch of them, if I remember correctly, while we were exploring various sites around the map. So I'm going to run back down here to the other base. We've got a chest there with a couple of random materials that I keep meaning to pick up. We're gonna grab that stuff and grab some of the copper wire here and see if we can actually wrap up tier 5 today as well. So we're back up here at the hub with our copper wire. So we're gonna put all of these components in. We made the additional modular frames we needed. We did have like 15 of those sitting in a chest, so that made our lives a lot easier here. And we keep making these motors manually. We are going to need to automate that process here at some point. But for now, we've been keeping up with our research. So let's get this alternate fluid going. And with that, we're going to wrap up all of the technologies we've got here in tier 5 and be ready to start working on tier 6. I really want to get to having the trains unlocked here soon. I think that's how we're going to bring our materials back up from the refinery rather than trying to worry about trucks. So I'm not going to worry about heading back down there to build the truck setup yet. We're going to just get our power sorted out, get our fuel generators up and running, because we'll be able to have way more power available to us once we can start making things with fuel. And that's going to lead into being able to have a jetpack, which would be amazing as well. So I'm really excited to get all of this stuff unlocked. Even the Pipeline Mark II is exciting because we're going to be able to create much more efficient designs for things like our power layouts. So this is a great place to wrap up today's episode. We've got all the technologies for tier 5 done. We got our refinery up and running, more or less. We're going to have to go back down there and fine tune the power grid a little bit here, which I'll finish up off camera. And yeah, we're going to jump into tier 6 and start cranking out computers here in the next episode. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have, hit that like button. It helps the channel out a lot. That's all for today. Kedrick out.